It's been described as a clear and consistent bias by social media giant Twitter toward the US government and its hegemonic agenda. On August 6th, the social media giant unveiled a new feature that labeled government-affiliated media on the platform. Twitter says it has decided to label government-affiliated accounts from the 5 permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. That includes the US, UK, France, Russia and China. But ironically, Twitter has just gone after Russian and Chinese media. In other words, state-related channels of the United States, the United Kingdom and France, which also happen to be NATO members, have gone unscathed.
Because Twitter is not an independent organization. It's a business, and its business interest lies with the United States. We can't expect multinational corporations like this to be working around moral issues or to have any principles, whilst they may pretend that and they may put out press releases and like to present themselves as a method of communication, of freedom and of free speech.
Twitter also claims it does not allow state-affiliated media to run ads in the platform. But a look at Twitter's Ads Transparency Center reveals the sheer duplicity of the media platform. Twitter's Ads Transparency Center claims to publicly disclose all paid advertisements which are known as sponsored tweets. A review of the page reveals US government's Voice of America and specifically its Persian language arm VOA Farsi did exactly the opposite of Twitter's stated policy. More specifically, in the first week of August, VOA Persia published paid adverts in Twitter, which mainly contained anti-Iran contents with quotes from President Trump and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo. Other ads were meant to spark fear about coronavirus in Iran and spread disinformation against the government in Tehran.
Well, of course, Twitter and the other platforms are based in the United States. They are part of the capitalist structure, and so they'll do what the United States government want them to do. And for them, the selling of ads to attempt to influence the political situation in Iran is just business.
It's now a widely known fact that Voice of America is directly funded by the US government and is considered the mouthpiece of Washington's policies. Voice of America, including its Persian channel, falls under the jurisdiction of US Agency for Global Media. The agency openly states that its goals must be consistent with the foreign agenda of the United States. It's now an open secret that Twitter has silenced critical voices in countries where Washington is trying to implement regime change. Thousands of Twitter users in Iran, Syria, Russia and China who have been unaffiliated with their governments have been suspended by the social media giant. The US government has already ordered big tech corporations to silence critical voices of the US foreign policy.
It's very clear that the U.S. government's strategy toward Iran, which is a regime change strategy, Washington wants to overthrow the government in Tehran, and it's waging what scholars refer to as unconventional warfare or hybrid warfare. So this means that the U.S. has been waging direct military conflict by murdering, assassinating top Iranian officials, including Qasem Soleimani and others. These are blatant war crimes and illegal under international law.
Twitter is closely linked to hawkish organizations like Freedom House that supported United States interventionist policies in other countries.
But what's even worse than that is that Twitter is actually lying about its stated policy banning ads from state-affiliated media outlets. Specifically, the U.S. government runs a media organization called the U.S. Agency for Global Media. And this was an organization created during the Cold War by the CIA in order to spread anti-communist propaganda against the Soviet Union and also against communist China. But it's also expanded and now pushes regime change propaganda against many countries. So Iran is one of the countries that's very heavily targeted by this U.S. propaganda campaign.
Back in 2019, it was revealed that a senior Twitter executive with editorial responsibility for the Middle East was also a part-time officer in the British Army Psychological Warfare Unit. Twitter boasts about its philanthropic mission through civic engagement for a force of good. Yet by silencing critical voices and allowing Washington-supported propaganda materials, it has effectively turned into the arm of Western media state.